नमस्कार। MA Philosophy MPY-001 Block number 4 Unit number 3 Dwait Vedant. Objectives. This unit has an objective of introducing the dualistic philosophy of Vedanta developed by Madhava. Introduction. Dwait is one of the living system of Vedantic thought in India, having its own well-defined community of followers, religious institutions, and extensive philosophical literature in Sanskrit, and the substantial body of devotional literature in Kannada. Dvaita system has been the chief rival is thought to the Advait of Sankara in the history of Indian philosophy. It stood up for realism in Indian thought against all forces of idealism and acosmism. The followers of Madhava, especially Jayatirtha and Vyasatirth, present the logical skill and depth of acute dialectic thinking almost unrivaled in the whole range of Indian thought. Madhava derives his philosophical tenets from the three authoritative prasthanas, the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, and the Brahma Sutras. From the Puranas and Mahabharata, the the quintessence of Madhava's philosophy is that Vishnu Hari is the Supreme Lord, Supreme God. The world is real, and the difference between God and soul does actually exist. All the living beings are dependent upon Vishnu, and they are divided into higher and lower classes. Liberation consists in the enjoyment of bliss that is inherent in oneself. Pure devotion is the is the means of attaining it. Madhvacharya life and work. Madhvacharya of 12th century AD is the founder of the Dvaita Vedanta. Traditionally, he is also known as Ananda 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 Tirtha and Purna Prajna. His birthplace is said to be the village of Pajaka near Udupi in Karnataka. Madhava proclaims himself as the third incarnation of Vayu after Hanuman and Bhima. Madhava was a many-sided personality. He had a stupendous memory, and he was a he was a splendid debater. Although he accepted sannyas at the hands of Achyuta Prekshacharya, a renowned Advaita teacher, he opposed Shankara's monastic tenets and interpretations. He was convinced that the sacred texts don't propagate the Mayabhat, but the realistic theism. Madhvacharya installed the idol of Lord Krishna at Udupi, which has become the center of the Dvaita Vedanta, with the tradition of Ashtamats with his 8 disciples. Madhav is a prolific writer in Sanskrit, both in prose and in verse. He quotes profusely from Vedic, Buddhist, Jain, and the other system of philosophy and religion of India. In short, he was a scholar, saint, philosopher, and mystic. The works of Madhva are 37 in number. Some of his major works are his commentaries on Prasthanatraya, Gita, Brahmasutra, and Upanishads, commentaries on Vedas, epics, and Puranas, and his 10 Prakaranas. Other writings in his tradition, there have been commentaries, tikkas on Madhva's work written by Jayatirtha and uh, Vyasatirtha. Dvaita is notion and the meaning. The term Dvaita, meaning dualism, posits more than one fundamental metaphysical principle to explain the universe, or the fundamental distinction between the human soul of the supreme being. Dualism is the theory which admits of two independent and mutually irreducible substances, In it, a fundamental twofold distinction is drawn. In Western philosophy, dualism is clearly seen in Plato's any fundamental twofold distinction between the intangible and the sensible. In Descartes' distinction between two substances, mind and matter, and Fichte's distinction between ego and non-ego may be described as dualistic. Among the classical Indian tradition, Sankhya propagates dualism with its two fundamental and eternal categories constituted of reality, namely Purush and Prakriti, spirit and matter. Madhava has put more depth into the meaning of the term Dvaita as it is applied to his thought. The dualism of Madhava admits two mutually irreducible principles as constituting reality as a whole. Yet God is regarded as the only independent Swatantra and the other as dependent Partantra. The Supreme Being is the one and only independent principle. All finite reality comprising of Prakriti, Purushas, Kala, Karma, Swabhava, etc. is dependent. For Dvaita Vedanta, their dependent categories are reals and also eternal. Madhava advocates pluralistic theism to maintain the unity, sovereignty, and independence of the Supreme Being. Dualism of Madhava upholds that the dependent reals reals are not in spite of the Lord, but because of Him. Therefore, for Advait Vedanta, although there are two principles, yet one of them finite, dependent completely on the other for its being and becoming. There is another aspect of dualism for Madhva. It is its realistic attitude to the experiences of life. Our finite experiences of embodied existence and our efforts to achieve liberation from bondage have both a real value and validity of their own and are not mere illusion created by avidya as held by Advaitins. Again, in Dvait Vedanta, since Bheda or difference is the very nature of being, along with Brahman, the principles like Jiva and Prakriti are co-eternal and uncreated, but they are dependent on God. General philosophy of Madhava. Philosophy of Madhava is contained in his commentaries on sacred texts. Especially, he shares the prominent place along with Shankara and Ramanuj sister, as one of the syst- uh, systematizer of Vedantic thought. His commentary on Brahma Sutra as established in unique system of dualistic Vedanta as Sankaracharya Ramanujacharya develops their developed their own theory and interpretations on the Upanishadic teaching and the teachings of the Brahma Sutras and called their systems Advaita and Vishishtadvaita. Madhvacharya's system is called Dvaita Vedanta. The basic issues dealt in all these the three systems in regarding the relationship between Brahman, the individual soul, Jiva, and the world Jagat. Madhvacharya refuted the Mayavada theory of Shankara in his system of Advaita. The upheld the world is not bundle of illusionary objects created out of Maya and Avidya. For him, the world is real, but of course dependent on the Brahman. In the same way, Madhava differed from Sankara, who said that the individual self is not different from the Supreme Self. The identity of the Jeev and Brahman is somehow established in Advait Vedanta. In Dvait Vedanta, for Madhava, Jiva is different from Brahman and not identical with him. In the same way, Madhava also rejected the claims of qualified monism without reconciling with the Vishishtadvait of Ramanuja. The philosophy of Madhava held that the Chit spirit and Achit matter are different realities from Brahman and do not form his body Sarira. For in qualified monism, we find that Ramanuja considered the world and the souls are part of the whole reality. The Brahman we shall elaborately see these distinctive teaching in the following sections. How Madhava different from other school of Vedanta. The speciality of the philosophy of Madhava lies in his advocacy of various differences. He spoke of the reality of fivefold differences between soul and God, soul and soul, soul and matter, God and matter, one material thing and another. Thus, the concept of difference Veda is central to the philosophical system of Madhava. That is the reason one can call his philosophy as pluralistic, since he speaks of the reality of the external world and of the souls. We consider the Dvaita Vedanta as realistic. In his concept of God, we find Madhava propagating theistic principles and worship. Therefore, one can call the philosophy of Madhava as theistic. It accepts the personal God who is the only independent Swatantra reality, the other real being entirely dependent on him. Metaphysics of Dvaita Vedanta. Concept of God. As we have seen earlier, Madhva recognized two kinds of reality: independent Swatantra and dependent Paratantra. God is the independent reality, individual soul and the world are dependent reality. He speaks of God as a personal God. God is the supreme person called Iswara. He is completely independent, perfect, absolute, and pure consciousness. He is Savesa. He possesses infinite qualities. He assumes various manifestations. The Supreme Lord is Vishnu. Lakshmi, the consort of Vishnu, is eternally blessed and absolute, accomplished. The eternally contemplates Vishnu. Lakshmi is dependent on Vishnu. She is intelligent. Prakriti is the material cause of the world. The Lord enters into Prakriti and makes himself into many. The Lord's will is Prakriti. The understanding of God in Dvaita Vedanta is theistic. In it is his theology, so to say. This is described as uncompromising theism. For Madhava, Vishnu is the supreme Lord, the purpose and the God of all the scriptures. Sadagamas is revealing and making the supreme known to the people. This is to say the prime import Maha Tatparya of the sacred text in Vishnu, not only the scriptures. Even Madhava asserts that every word in the language primarily signifies Vishnu and refers only secondarily to other objects. The language of people is only to signify God. With regard to the attributes of qualities of the Supreme God, Vishnu Madhava is the great theologian. Vishnu possesses all auspicious, blessed, infinite, and eternal attributes. The relation between God and His attributes is governed by the principle of Vises, by virtue of which a thing is distinguished from its permanent attributes, though they are identical in essence. There is no fundamental distinction between God and His attributes. He is the supreme reality, possessing all excellence like infinite knowledge, bliss, power, etc. He manifests in various forms, incarnates as avatars, and is present in the sacred images. He is apprehensible through the Vedas, Shruti, though not fully comprehensible, as any theistic understanding would go to Supreme God is everything in relation to the world. From him, Vishnu is the efficient cause, Naimitya Karan of the universe. He is the cause of creation, Srishti, preservation, Sthiti, and destruction, Pralay. In his relation to the soul, he is the liberator, as he himself is the primary cause of the bondage of samsara chain of existence for the soul. The so-called apparent cause of bondage such as ignorance, avidya, action, karma and the subtle body, linga, sarir are only the secondary cause of the chain of existence. Ultimately, God's grace is needed for removal of bondage, though the effort are fruitful initially. From the part of the Jeev, for Madhava, it is Vishnu's grace, prasada alone, which can give salvation, mukti to the Jeev. The concept of Jeev. Jiva by essence is spiritual consciousness that is partless. This Jiva possesses knowledge and the bliss. In this position, Jiva is similar to God but is dependent on God. For Madhava, God is the perfect Jiva and the individual Jivas are only images of God. Madhava defended the distinction and plurality among the Jivas. We shall later speak of various other differences Madhva's philosophy has. This becomes also a feature of his realism. He classifies jivas. Some are not liable to pain. Some are liable to pain as they are not on their way to purification. Yet some other are eternally punished. These are the evil souls who become so weighted down by karma that they are not able to rise. Accordingly, each jiva is distinct and unique because of its yogyata. Each jiva resembles and reflects God. It becomes a pratibimb, the reflection of Bimb Vishnu in accordance with its sarup. This distinction Taratamya of the Jivas remains a foundation for his theory of gradation among the Jivas, starting from Lakshmi and coming down to those bound for hell, in agreement to each one's Sarup. According to Madhava, there are three kinds of Jivas. The first kind of Jivas are those who are fit for liberation, Mukti Yogyas. The second ones are those that are caught in the cycle of birth and rebirth. Uh, Nitya Samsarin and travel endlessly in their journey. In the third category, there are souls that are eternally condemned to hell. Tamo Yoga. By making such a distinction, Taratamya among the Jivas, Madhvas tries to give an original solution to the problem of evil and to lift God Vishnu above all blame for evil in the world. Dominic, what in the world concept of world, the world of Prakriti and is not created by God as it has eternal existence. The external world is affirmed to be ultimately real, satya, and continues to exist at all times. The world process the world process is beginningless and eternal, Anadi and Nitya. All the material products originate from Prakriti or primal matter. Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas are its three gunas. The Dvait conception of causation differs from the well-known view of Advait and Vishishtadvait. It is known as Sat Asat Karyavad. The effect is considered as neither existent nor non-existent. It exists as the cause but not as the effect. In this metaphysical thought, the unique contribution of Madhava is the notion of Veda and Vises. Madhva accepts five-fold difference on Ved in reality, namely the difference between God and soul, Iswara and Jeev, between soul and soul, Jiva and Jeev, between God and matter, between soul and matter, and between material objects. Different doesn't mean independence. God, Vishnu alone is the independent reality. Swatantra Tattva and all other beings are dependent on God. Paratantra Tattva, the system of Madhava accepts 10 categories: substance, drabya, attribute, guna, action, karma, and universal, samanya, speciality, visesh, the specified, visishta, the whole, and amsin, potency, shakti, similarity, sadrasya, and non-existent, abhava. Substance are 20 in number. Of these, Brahman and souls are sentient. Of these, Brahman, the souls are uh, Chetana, sentient Chetana. The rest are insentient Achetana. The 20 substances are Brahman, Lakshmi, Jivas, space, Akash, time, Kala, primal matter, Prakriti, and its eight evolutes: the cosmic egg, uh, Brahmand, ignorance, avidya, speech, sound, varna, darkness, timir, mental impressions, vasana, and reflection, pratibimb. E- Epistemology, foundation of Madhava's metaphysics of differences among realities of God, soul, and the world, lies in his epistemology. For Madhava, the world of objects and things exists independently of human mind. It is the realistic perspective of Dwaita as opposed to the doctrine of Mayavad of Shankara. This doctrine of realism is characterized by the epistemological position that the mind perceives the objects and knows them. Humans experience the object, and the objectivity of the human knowledge is manifested in different pramanas. The means of knowledge pramanas are perception, inference, and verbal testimony revealed scripture. For him to perceive is to become aware of something. Number one as unique, number two as being different from the other thing, number three as being different from the perceiving self. Hence, knowledge is the articulation of these perceived differences. Perceptual knowledge is direct and immediate knowledge. Knowledge is intrinsically valid. If we deny perception, there is no knowledge. For Madhava, the pramanas are means of knowledge, anupramanas or knowledge itself, kevala pramanas. Each of the pramanas is therefore self-valid, true, and objective knowledge. Even though they are all valid knowledge, they are not equal. Madhava says that there is a hierarchy among them, each having one's own importance in its sphere and supports the other pramanas. Perception is valid and important in its own sphere and is useful for the later inference and so on. The sense organ, manas and sakshin constitute the instruments of knowledge. The notion of sakshin as a sense organ is unique in Madhva's system. Etymologically, the word sakshin means a witness, a seer, or one endowed with vision. Madhva defines it as sakad. Madhva defines it as shakshad. Saksad iksate iti sakshi. Saksad iksate is sakshi. Thus, the sakshi is the name of the spiritual sense organ of the self, and its chaitanya indriya, essential sense organ partaking of the nature of consciousness, though which it intuits its experiences, but it is not different from the self. It is the self itself. Sakshin is the ultimate and un unassailable basis for the intrinsic validity of knowledge. For self validity is the nature of Sakshin itself. Sakshin is the source of all knowledge in the individual and ever vigilant witness of one's own validity. This is so true that there can be no error where the knowledge of Sakshin is concerned. Sakshin Gyan is infallible, for nothing can come in between the witnessing itself and its light. All error, therefore, is due to the malfunctioning of manas and the other senses. Error or illusion consist in misperception of the non-existent as existent and of the existent as non-existent. A distinction is made by Madhava in Agama as um, Parushe and Aparushe. The latter constitute the Vedas Shruti, whose validity is infallible. Madhava's doctrine gives great importance to Vedas Shruti as a means for the true knowledge of supreme reality, since perception and inference are confined to the facts of ordinary experience only. Bondage and liberation. Madhava accepts the reality of human misery and bondage. Maya causes the individual to be unaware of the relationship of the soul with God. Ultimately, it is God who makes Maya cause bondage. Hence he alone brings liberation through his grace. Although there is self-effort on the part of the soul, the devotee on his part must prove himself worthy of it by good works, karma, acquisition of right knowledge, jnana yoga, and single-minded devotion, bhakti yoga. The adhikarins should work out his salvation by an ascetical striving through the hearing of the scriptures, Shravan, reflection, manan, and contemplation, nididhyasan under the guidance of a guru. This will lead the person to bimbopasana and further to the immediate cognition, aparoksha gyan of Vishnu and to mukti. In Dvaita Vedanta understanding, liberation is achieved through the knowledge of the greatness of God. Liberation is possible by devotion to God by Sravan, Manan, and Nididhyasan. Through bhakti, combined with meditation, one can dispose oneself to the experience of God, Vishnu's favor and grace. Prasad, a human being can be liberated from them and attain moksha or liberation. Hence, finally, it is God's grace that removes Maya and liberates the soul. Liberation consists in the realization of soul's innate bliss. Then, according to his yogita, he will attain bliss and occupy the place preserved for him in the galaxy of the elect. He will not be absorbed in the absolute to the extent of losing his self-identity, and yet he will be united with the Lord in knowledge and love, and with other emancipated jivas in the family of intimacy. General estimate of Dvaita Vedanta. Madhava, through his system, has made a great impact in Indian philosophical tradition. He classified reality into Swatantra and Paratantra. He rationalized the conception of substance and attributes with the doctrine of uh, doctrine of Vaisesas in terms of an identity in difference. The concept of Sakshi as an a priori principle of knowledge in his contribution in Indian epistemology. By his commentaries, he brought in the reconciliation of the existence of eternal substance nitya padarthas like jivas, akashas, prakriti, etc. With that of the acceptance of the universal causation of Brahman, he achieved it by his doctrine of creation defined as mm, paradhin visesapatti. He brought in the realistic notion of reality, his understanding of God and soul, metaphysical notion in general, and his ethical concept and practices are well supported by his defense of means of knowledge. One could say thus his metaphysics and ethics are fruit of his well worked out epistemological theories. Dvaita Vedanta is called as theistic, dualistic, pluralistic, and realistic from different perspectives. Madhava was conceived that that we can have knowledge of other realities and thus man can really reach truth. This truth has objectivity or correspondence of our knowing mind with the object of knowledge. He believed in a personal God and essential difference between God and man. Again, he believed in the Sagun Brahman who can be reached through bhakti, devotion, impessing self-surrender, and God's grace. These two concepts make Dvaita Vedanta different from the other Indian system. For him, all jivas are destined by God to attain bliss after a life of samsara or to continue to remain in it or to go into the hell of eternal darkness. The doctrines of soul that are liberated mukta and those eternally damned has a parallel in Jain religious thought also. Jains distinguish two groups of soul. They are those who are redeemed bhavya and those which cannot be redeemed abhavya. His Vedantic interpretations of the Brahmasutra brought in a unique system of philosophy as his counterparts like Sankara and Ramanuja. He has written many learned commentaries on the basic text of Vedanta, the Vedanta Sutras of Badrayana, the Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita, while all the other acharyas had attempted in their bhasya only to establish the samanabhya harmony, saman, samanvaya, samanvay, a harmony of the various terms and doctrine found in the Upanishads. Madhva has established a sam, samanvay of the Upanishadic thought with the Puranas and Itihasas as well. Let us sum up. Madhva's philosophy is one of dualism. The thinkers of Dvaita school have made many outstanding contributions to the problems of philosophy. The views propounded by Madhva on the nature of Sakshi, Vises, Bheda, substance and attributes, the universal space and time are very much ahead of his times and remarkably suggestive. The devotional movement of the Haridasas of Karnataka Haridasas of Karnataka was a spontaneous expression of Madhva's religious thought in the regional language of the majority of its adherents, and its appeal reached to common people. Dvaita literature is very extensive. Much of it still remains unpublished and unexplored. Plurality of the real is the basic doctrine of Dvaita. According to Madhva, difference is the very nature of things. He identifies five eternal levels of difference between God and the individual soul, God and matter, one individual soul and another individual soul and matter, and one material thing and another. He looks upon the world as real. For that, God is the highest being, the most perfect being, the only free being, the ultimate goal and destiny of humans. He is the giver of salvation, liberation through grace, prasad. The path of bondage and liberation is also realistic. Thank you.